Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, but today we have a very special guest host. Her name is Shireen Richter, all the way from South Africa. Shireen is a laughter professor in South Africa, and she is putting together a book called Expert Mavericks, and she's interviewing some high-profile people from South Africa who have a lot to share in regards to what it is to be successful and what you need to do to have success and happiness in your life. So really looking forward to hearing those South African accents and hearing from all these guest experts that she is going to interview. So take it away, Shireen.
An incredible doctor who goes beyond the call of duty to ensure that his patients get the medical attention that they deserve. He is a man who is top of his game and has gone where no man has gone before. Dr. Ridwan Mia is a plastic surgeon who practices in South Africa and performs operations all over the world. He was awarded the National Order of the Baobab in silver and performed the first clone skin graft procedure in Africa. Ridwan also works with the Smile Foundation, using his talents and abilities to help underprivileged children in South Africa. Welcome, Dr. Ridwan Mia, as one of our incredible mavericks in this book called Expert Mavericks. And I'm so excited to have you here today and to be able to showcase your amazing work to the world.
Thank you very much.
Ridwan, mavericks have so many different meanings to different people. What does a maverick feel like to you? What does a maverick mean to you?
I'd like to think that it means somebody who uses their talents, their abilities, their skills, and all the resources available to them to make the most that they can be, to be as innovative as they can be, and to really, excel in every way they possibly can.
And you've really done that. And in South Africa, I think you're a celebrity for us and someone that we all look up to with the incredible, groundbreaking work that you've done. You really, as a doctor, have been a maverick. Do you want to tell our listeners and tell us how it all started? Where did you start? You had this incredible career, but where did you start?
Well, I think hearing you say those things is very humbling, because I certainly don't see it that way. For me, it started when I was in high school. I had an uncle who was a general practitioner in the little town of Mafeking in the Northwest Province. And I used to observe him a lot. He was one of those people who are always very keen to teach, share his wisdom. And he would take me along to see patients. He would take me to his practice. He was a true small-town general practitioner in that they did a little bit of everything, whether it be psychiatry, a little bit of surgery, a little bit of pharmaceuticals, all that sort of thing, because that was the demands on them. And I found that I saw someone who enjoyed what they do. I saw there was a big academic side to it, and I saw him derive such satisfaction from being able to help others at the same time. And I think that was really the beginning of my journey in medicine and then in surgery.
And you weren't obviously squeamish and had a calling for medicine, I guess.
I think I always did. I think my sympathy for people in need of healthcare always overtook my squeamishness. And I always had an attitude that said, well, if I don't do it, then who's going to?
That's an amazing way to live life, is to have a compassion and sympathy for others. Most success comes from struggle, and a lot of people who have become mavericks have done that through very challenging backgrounds or having struggled to get their success. Was yours an easy journey? Were there lots of bumps along the road?
I think I always try to maintain a positive attitude in every situation. I think I get that from my parents, to try and be an eternal optimist as best you can be. And it was difficult. It's a long road to becoming a plastic surgeon and to working in the environment we do. It's not always the easiest with the constraints on resources, especially in our teaching hospitals. And I found that, very often I felt negative, and I felt, is this journey worthwhile? There were times when you're stuck in the middle of the night, very sleep deprived, lots of patients ahead of you, having to do lots of operations, being confronted with some ghastly trauma. As you know, levels of interpersonal violence in South Africa are very high, and you can become very despondent. But I think the idea was to keep my eye on the ball. I knew that there was an aim, there was a goal that I wanted to reach in terms of career, but also in terms of what I would be able to do for others. And I think that's what kept me going. There were lots of obstacles to following this career path. I was told on many occasions, and with South Africa going through the changes it had gone through at that time, I first was told I was too dark-skinned to be able to enter this field. I should give up any hopes of that. And then a few years later, I was told I was too light-skinned for the same to achieve the same aims. I should look for something simpler or go off into GP practice. I'd make more money, I'd start earning faster, I'd be younger and I'd be able to save more money for myself, that sort of thing. And the temptations were often there. But I felt that there was something worthwhile in staying the course. And, those late nights, they taught me many lessons. And in the least, I think it led to an increase in the amount of skill you take with you into your profession. So none of that time was wasted. And I think it just increased my determination.
I think often through struggle comes triumph.
Absolutely.
So what made you choose plastic surgery and make you choose this speciality?
I, at some stage after my internship at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, realized that I was more surgically inclined and that I would be happiest in the operating theatre, doing operations. And I was one of those doctors that wanted to see the results happen before my eyes. So whether it was a very long operation or a very technically difficult or challenging procedure, I was very keen to jump in. And that first got me into surgery. And while I was doing that, I realized that I preferred to do very fine, more, sensitive type of surgery, operating on sensitive areas of the body, or difficult procedures. And I like the idea of planning surgery. And then I had my first experience. I went to the UK for a while to gain some outside experience, and it so happened that I was put into a plastic surgical unit, and that was my first encounter with hand surgery, cleft lip and palate surgery, craniofacial surgery, that part of plastic surgery that, that reconstructive side. We did a lot of post-cancer reconstruction, and I saw that as a stepping stone, and I realized that this was the area of surgery I really wanted to be in. So when I came back to South Africa, I looked to getting into plastic surgery, and that's how I moved across from general surgery into plastic surgery.
And then, of course, your big step to doing something completely groundbreaking, the story of Pippie Kruger, which made news all over the world, really groundbreaking in Africa, and you honestly saved that little girl's life. Can you tell us how that happened? Share that story. It's a beautiful story, and it really shows the maverick in you, your determination not to give up, your will to make a plan in the face of adversity. Can you share that story with us?
Sure. It's something I still think about so often. I have to first say, I didn't do that on my own. I was part of a team. There were times when I felt like I was leading the team, and there were times that I felt I was just very much just a cog in the wheel. This happened on New Year's Eve. Being a holiday, being a very strange time of year. There are not many other plastic surgeons around. Certainly many of my seniors, were away on holiday or spending time with their families. And it so happened that I was still fairly junior in my own practice. And I was called on, asking whether I would be available to treat this little girl who'd been burnt so badly. And I made my way over to the hospital on that New Year's Day and found a horrific patient, because she was so badly traumatized, and her body had already begun to shut down from the severity of the injury.
Can I ask you, for listeners or people who don't know the story, what actually happened? She had something like 85% of her body burned. What happened to her?
What happened was they were having a family barbecue or braai, and her dad was using some fire lighting gel to help get the fire stoked. And unfortunately, the canister in which this fire lighting gel came caught the flame and exploded. And she was standing 3 meters away, quite far away from her dad, and this gel flew in the air and landed on her and caught her clothing and got burning. And unfortunately, it's hydrophobic, so even with water, that gel just keeps on burning, and it's very sticky, so it stuck to her body and continued to burn. And unfortunately, yes, around 80% of her body was burnt, full thickness. At times, we found the burn had extended right down to, for example, on her chest, right down to the ribs. So it burned through the skin into the soft tissue, burning up to the fat and muscle underneath as well in areas. So she was very severely burnt. So that was what we were confronted with, when we first found her. It was a very difficult course. Her body had shut down on many occasions. It's the body's natural response to try and protect it from the severity of a burn. Without our skin, we are unable to preserve our body temperature. We're unable to preserve protein and essential fluids. And also we're very vulnerable to infections from the outside and the cold.
So basically, looking at her when she came in, it didn't look very hopeful.
It didn't at all. In fact, we were fed a very negative story by the referring paramedics who brought her. The other thing is that she had to go on a 4-hour journey looking for a hospital that had someone who was on call that evening, and a hospital that would accept a very severely burnt child. Most hospitals are very reluctant to accept very severe burns because the prognosis is so poor. The hospital stays are obviously are very often long and drawn out, and the demands on resources can be very high, and everybody worries about the fact that an ICU bed would be blocked and an intensive care bed would be blocked and not available to other patients for a long duration.
So how many hospitals did they go to?
They called many hospitals along the way. I wouldn't know exactly how much, but they traveled from Limpopo province all the way down to Gauteng and phoned hospitals progressively all along the way, and then kept getting turned away, so they just kept driving. And eventually they reached the Garden City Hospital, and I was on call there, and that's how they ended up with us. A pediatrician by the name of Dr. Miles Bartlett, a very well-respected pediatrician intensivist in Johannesburg, initially got the call, and he rang me to say, I need surgical expertise, and are you willing to accept this child? And that's how we began treating her. What it meant was, over those next 5.5 months, him and I had to coordinate our efforts towards her, and we had agreed very early on that we would take our lead from the patient, and we would continue. And I'm so happy that he has the same philosophy I do, that you don't give up on a patient, and you don't necessarily follow the textbooks in terms of saying, at this point we're going to pull out. We allow the patient to determine that. And he was equally keen to make sure that we did whatever we could to have this child survive, and survive in a good way. And the other thing was, we had to learn to work with each other. Surgery and medicine are two different sides of the profession, and over those months there were many lessons for both of us to learn in terms of the collaboration. So he looked after the physiology, and I looked after the surgical side of her. And that was a very delicate balance. It's something that we both had to spend a lot of time with each other and with the patient together to learn how to do.
And what made you think about doing skin cloning? It had never been done here before. What gave you the idea that something like this could even be possible? And how did you even know what was the next step, what to do?
There were a combination of things. The first thing was her parents. They had this determination that they would have this child back and intact and alive. And they refused to take no for an answer. They just absolutely said, whatever it is that you have to do for my child, we will stand by you and we'll support you. So they very much became part of our team. And when it came to the time to deciding how to cover her skin, how to cover her body with skin, we had very few options available to us. I mean, only 20% of her existing skin was ready for us to be able to graft from. So what we call harvesting skin, in the normal procedure where we harvest skin from the existing non-burnt areas of the body, we use methods of spreading that skin out. So just like you can spread skin out over we call it meshing, where you're able to mesh the skin to be able to stretch it out like a fishnet. To cover a wider area than it should, with little holes in between that heal by themselves. So we considered that, and we knew we would have to do that many times over and scar pretty much 100% of her body in the process. And we were reluctant to do that, and her parents were horrified by the thought. They said, "Are you really going to spoil everything on her?" And they begged us to look for alternatives. And medically speaking, there was a big impetus towards that as well, for us to look for alternatives. We'd heard about skin spray, spraying on skin cells that would clone. It's been done in Australia with some success. It has been done in Cape Town with limited success, having said that. And it's good for smaller areas because the skin cells don't always land in the right way. And, so it's not something practical for a bigger area, especially on a child.
It's not like a spray paint where you can just spray everything and...
Absolutely, yeah. If it was that easy, we would have certainly considered something like that. The other ideas were to use pig skin or cadaver skin, but those were both temporary measures that would allow the child to heal, but eventually she would have required her own skin cells as well.
Why is that? Does the body reject it?
The body eventually rejects it, yes, unfortunately. So it's a good temporary cover. And we certainly advocate the use of cadaver skin. So people who donated their skin after they passed on, you can use their skin. Or pig skin as a temporary cover, but it's very expensive, not available to us at the moment in South Africa. And one of the things we really look forward to having is a skin bank, where we can harvest skin and then have it ready for people such as Pippie Kruger who would have benefited from that at the beginning. The other thing that was really a motivation was we all had this in our minds the entire time, was something I had learned in specializing to be a plastic surgeon. We all knew the name of Professor Green and Reinwald. These two professors from the United States had pioneered a technique of cloning your actual skin cells using DNA stem cell technology to be able to clone sheets of skin and cover extensive burn wounds. It had never been attempted in South Africa before. We had no one who had any experience who could give us some guidance or wisdom in that regard. And together with her parents, we sat down and we looked at how do we reach these guys. And honestly speaking, Annika Kruger, Pippie's mom, had sent her first email off to Professor Green and said, "I've been told about you by my doctors, my daughter's in this situation." And he said to her, "Well, my product's been commercialized. It's a non-profit company that exists in Boston, in the Cambridge area, and on the grounds of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and it was called Epicell."
And was this already being done extensively in the US?
I wouldn't say extensively. They've done a few cases.
So it was still new.
It was relatively new. They had some experience, but I think not to the extent as well with Pippie Kruger. So when we presented it to them, they were quite excited about it as well. They also had a South African doctor, Dr. Sven Kili, who worked for them, and he was based in Europe at the time. And so we had, what happened was a series of emails, and then it progressed to the local representative of the company. They do some other work here in South Africa with enzymatic syndromes and so on. And this doctor came out to us and had a look at the patient and, took some idea from me about what it was. And I said, look, I really need to know if this is going to be possible. A number of teleconferencing sessions then went between South Africa, Europe, and Switzerland and the United States, and we chatted about it and a lot, and then we decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. So when her physiology had recovered, when Pippie was ready for skin grafting, we had to take 2 tiny pieces of skin from her groin area, each measured 2 by 6 centimeters. So tiny for us, but big for her body.
Yes.
She was only 3 years old at the time.
Yes.
And we sent that off in a specialized container off to Boston. We had to apply through government and ours and the United States government to be able to get permission to export and import human tissue. So we sent this tissue off to them in this very specialized laboratory. They cloned her skin over a period of about 2.5 weeks. And then the real challenge came about on how we were going to get the skin back to South Africa and onto the patient before it had died, because that skin has a limited viability time. So it's only viable for 24 hours after it leaves the lab, where it's being nourished and looked after. And
how long was that whole process of actually growing the skin?
I think the entire process took about 3 weeks. So we had to keep her stable in that time, prevent any infections. We used the time to our advantage. We had a number of what we would call rehearsals. We pretended we were taking her to theatre. We would, get her out of the ICU and back in. We would rehearse it with the theatre staff and everyone. We had some guidance from the guys in the States as well. But, we had to get the staff ready, because what we were all looking at was that day when the skin arrived. We couldn't afford to have lost any time.
And what were you feeling through this process? Were you nervous? Were you apprehensive? It had never been done before. As a doctor, you must have had some of your own fears, skepticism, anxiety. How were you feeling?
So, confession time. This was something we all did on the basis of need. None of us, I think the anesthetists, the nurses, the other doctors involved, and me, none of us thought that this was anything groundbreaking. None of us spared a moment to think that nobody had done it before in that way. And none of us thought there would be any, anyone would know about it beyond the hospital. So we just operated on a basis of needing to get this done. So we had I think there was a normal level of anxiety in terms of, a patient and needing a specialized procedure and that sort of thing. We were worried about the logistics of it. I think everyone was stressed about timing and handling of the skin. I had these thoughts of an immigration officer taking the skin and shaking it up and, trying to find out what it is.
What it was.
Someone at customs, rummaging through it to try and find out what it is, or getting blocked at the airport, after making the trip. So it was a bit traumatic in that way, but I think we were all excited. And we just all had this determination to make sure that this baby got covered and got to leave the hospital.
And did the company in the US give you guidance as to what to do and how to do it? Did they send somebody, or was it just purely learning on the run, as you say, on a need-to-know basis as you
absolutely.
did?
We had, like I said, the local company representative was here. He's a medical doctor, and he was with me every step of the way. Dr. Sven Kili actually himself flew out from Switzerland to South Africa, and he's originally South African, so this was very exciting for him as well. And he came out and to monitor the progress and to monitor the situation on the day the skin arrived as well. He was there counseling the parents, with us, and just taking them through each step on what to expect.
So on that day when the skin arrived, what happened? How long was the op?
The actual procedure took us not longer than about 3 hours, to be honest. It was the planning on either side of the op that was more anxiety causing. We had to make sure everyone was ready. We had to make sure everyone, from our occupational therapists to our scrub nurses to the ICU staff to the pediatrician, everyone had to be on standby and be exactly where they were supposed to be. The theatre had to be ready and warmed to the right temperature. We couldn't afford to have anything even on the way, on the journey from the ICU to the theatre. We were so worried that something could go wrong, whether it be infections or whether it be something blocking our way, whether it be another emergency in the hospital having to take precedence. So we had to take those things into account, and I think that kept us all on tenterhooks the entire day. We had the team from the Netcare 911 guys on standby, and they collected the skin from the airport with us. They did an amazing job, and they kept in touch. We had this 3-way phone call going all the way between the ambulance driver, the doctor from Epicel, and myself the entire time, to try and make sure that skin is like, we had almost a minute-to-minute account of the skin has landed, the doctor has brought it, is walking down the stairs with it, we're coming with it to so they got him at the tarmac, and they managed to get him into the airport clinic, and so he literally dropped off the skin, turned around and got back on the plane. They had they booked 2 seats on the plane, so the skin sat on its own seat, because and he had to watch it the entire time, and he literally had to hand over, sign the paperwork, have someone collect it, sign the paperwork, and bring it across to the hospital. I think the greatest miracle of that day was it had landed at about 5 o'clock in the evening from Boston. So after all that logistical planning, getting the skin, we had to get it from Boston to Atlanta and then to Johannesburg. We'd worked out that was the fastest route, and the skin had landed with not a long time of viability left. We just had about 2.5 hours left. And the biggest miracle really was that 15 minutes from the OR Tambo Airport to the Garden City Hospital in peak traffic at that time, and I was amazed that they made it.
It is a miracle.
We were so scared that there would be a roadblock or an accident or something on the road at that time, but they did so well, and they got the skin to us on time, and we were able to have the patient ready in that time. And as soon as the skin got there, her wounds had been exposed, and everyone was ready to get the skin onto her.
Incredible.
It really was an incredible day, and I think everyone was excited but very tense about making sure that it got done. And what was an added factor was we had a lot of media around, and the hospital management was very careful about making sure that the media kind of didn't get in the way, and it was a little bit disconcerting for us as well, because none of us had anticipated, I think none of us knew that there was so much interest outside in Pippie and her progress and what was really going on. A few days before the procedure, the hospital manager popped her head into theatre and said, "Oh, I see you're doing some sort of procedure. We've got a call from a media group, and would it be okay if they kind of came in and covered what you're doing?" And I said, "Well, as long as the parents are on board and they've given their permission and so on." And what I didn't realize was there was a huge social media following already into Pippie Kruger. Her mom had been phenomenal on things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and people were really catching on, and South Africans from all walks of life were worried about this little one. And us in the hospital, we were in a bit of a bubble, because none of us had realized what was going on outside, that there were so many people interested in this, and even the fundraising for the procedure had happened on quite a large scale. And there we were thinking that this was the family going to their own family members and friends and work colleagues and saying, "Please help us out." But in fact, what had happened was there were schools having cake sales. There were schools selling badges with Pippie's face on it, and having online competitions. And I think what struck me is that there was a domestic worker from the area where the hospital was, who walked in one evening and got herself into the ICU. I'm not entirely certain how she got into the ICU. It wasn't visiting hours or anything. She put her hand into her chest and pulled out a 20 rand note and said, "Are you the doctor looking after that burnt girl?" I said, "I am." And she said, "Well, I was the kids at the home where I work, they are raising money for her at school, and I heard about this girl, and I just wanted to give you this 20 rand that you can give to her parents." And it really touched me, and I thought, like, how would you... And it was only, I spoke to her mom afterwards when I gave her the money, and she said, "Yes, there's a lot more people out there than you realize who know about Pippie." And I only looked at this after the actual grafting procedure, and I was very overwhelmed, very humbled, very overwhelmed to see how many people were so interested in this child just coming through this. And really, when the manager spoke to me, the hospital manager spoke to me about media coverage, I expected a little article in the 6th page of the newspaper or something like that, not the on that day of the grafting, we saw these huge satellite vans outside the hospital, and I wondered what was going on. I didn't quite connect that they were actually there for what we were about to do. And then a team from Carte Blanche was there from Mnet, and they were, they wanted to do an interview before the procedure, and I was so worried about the timing, and they said, well, we just take 5 minutes, promise.
Yeah.
And they were so good. They really took 5 minutes, and I must say the media were very cooperative. They kept their distance, and we never felt like they were in the way. So they were really considerate about it, and I think they had the necessary sensitivity.
I think she was a girl who changed the nation, and you and your team were people who changed the nation, giving others hope and making us believe that as South Africans we can still be top of our game, and just because we don't live in the US or we don't live in Europe, and maybe we don't necessarily have all the technology available, we have the will and the determination and the brains to be able to do things like this. What would you say to other inspiring doctors or mavericks coming up in the ranks based on what you've been through and your experience? And from hearing your story, I think the power in it is you didn't really realize what you were doing. I think had you maybe realized, you would have been far more nervous and been more focused not on Pippie. So what would you say to other mavericks or other people who are wanting to achieve things that have never been done or achieve the impossible? What would you say?
I think one of the remarkable things about this is that what people have seen outside, from the outside, is those were all byproducts. They were all side effects or sequelae of what we were really doing. At the end of the day, as you say, we kept focused on getting Pippie healed and out of the hospital and back to home, and that was our priority. So all these other things were very much on the sidelines. And I would say to people is keep your eye on the ball, keep your progress in mind. Don't be intimidated by naysayers, because certainly, we had naysayers. We had certain colleagues who said to us, allow her to die peacefully, give her lots of morphine and let her go comfortably. We had a family who was determined to see the return of their child, whether she be burnt or scarred, or whether she be traumatized by the experience. They would prefer to have her alive and well and happy and with them, as opposed to losing her. And you see that today. She's a young, growing child. She's overcome many of the disabilities she endured or experienced as a result of her injuries. She's come such a long way, and this family has become more united than ever before. They're happy and they're grateful, and they've looked to helping others in the same situation. So I really would say to people, ignore those people that tell you you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. If you have the slightest of determination, follow that through.
So in a world filled with fear and negativity, people should never give up. We should always be thinking out of the box and thinking, how can we do this differently? Did you ever come to a crossroads in your career where you thought, I don't really want to be doing this, I should be doing something else? Was there ever a point in your career, in your journey, that you thought, this is not for me, it's too hard, it's too emotional, it's trying?
I think there was a time when I was still working in the university or state environment where I considered going into private practice as a full-time career, and I had to think long and hard about it. There were many reasons why I wanted to stay in that environment, but also many compelling reasons to leave. And I think one of the greatest motivators was the fact that I've never practiced plastic surgery based on a financial incentive. I've always done it because I enjoy the work and I enjoy my interaction with my patients. And then I found that I was doing more interesting and exciting things in the private sector. And I think I get this from my parents, who are both very charitable people, and they look to making a plan in many charities and fundraising. So I thought, well, I could marry those skills from them of fundraising and helping people in the private sector as much as I could in the state sector, and at the same time be able to do exciting, interesting, and innovative things in my career without feeling limited. And then I took the jump. So it was obviously at the beginning it's very daunting. You take a drop in salary because suddenly that safety net is gone. You don't have a guaranteed salary, and whatever you do has to come from the work you do. And you learn to modify your practice in that time. So that was quite a crossroads. But with hindsight, I'm very glad that I made that move, and I found that I was able to do a lot more rewarding work for people. We do a fair bit of pro bono work, travel to other countries sometimes to do surgery on people who can't afford it, and within South Africa as well. And I'm able to use the strength of being a private practitioner to be able to offer charitable surgical care, which I wouldn't be able to do if I was in the state sector.
I think that's a very powerful thing that not many people in your position do, is give back, and you do it in such an incredible philanthropic way. From the Smile Foundation, you've just come back from a trip helping children from Syria, am I right?
Mostly refugees from Syria, Iraq, and Palestine. So children who don't have homes and don't have access to an organized or formal healthcare sector.
Absolutely incredible that you give up of your time, which people pay dearly for, to do such incredible work to help change the world. Ridwan, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you. To end, can you just share what you hold in your heart? What is your message to the world?
I think it's pure determination, and I think everybody is born with a certain amount of determination. Unfortunately, in our lives, we have many obstacles and many compelling reasons that say to us, you need to let go of your goals, or you need to let go of what you really feel you need to achieve. And I think the challenge is really being able to apply yourself and say, I won't let that delay me or deter me from achieving my goals. We need to learn to rise above them, and we need to learn to clear negativity away. Whether you're a teenager faced with a drug problem, or whether you're someone who's struggling academically, or whether you're somebody who has too many responsibilities in your home or in your workplace, there is a way to overcome these things. And I think really by keeping focused and doing what you need to do, but keep focused on where you want to get, you will eventually get there. Keep your passion up and don't allow negativity to steer you away from your goals.
Thank you so much, Ridwan. Thank you. It was an honor.
It's a pleasure.
And there you have it. What an excellent interview. Thank you to our guest interviewer, Shireen Richter. She's interviewing people for her book, Expert Mavericks, which is going to be released later this year. We're looking forward to more interviews from Shireen, but until then, like and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.